Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Aranzazu Galan and I'm a member of the Build Up editorial team.
Welcome to Build Up, the European Commission's portal for energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. Directly stemming from the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, Build Up is the meeting place for everyone involved in making the European building and construction sector more energy efficient. Every month we focus on a topic that is key to making Europe's buildings as energy efficient as possible. Exploring that, you can find the latest content such as expert talks, webinars, case studies and more. From architects and engineers to academics and policy makers, we've got you covered. Build Up brings together thousands of registered members to reap the benefit of Europe's collective intelligence on all aspects of energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. The Build Up portal benefits from the expertise of our ambassadors. Drawn from industry and academia, the ambassadors bridge the gap between EU and national level and help shape our editorial content. Want to promote your work? Build Up disseminates your research, projects and events through a variety of channels. Become a member to exchange knowledge with your peers. You can disseminate tools and resources, share good practices, and consult open source publications. Join the discussion on social media and become part of the Build Up community, or subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest news. However you participate, the Build Up portal is here to inspire, inform and connect. Build Up, the European portal for energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. Join the community for opportunities and updates.
It is a pleasure for Build Up to host today's webinar entitled Building Renovation at District Level, Combining Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Sources, brought to you by the IEA EBC Annex 75 project and Build Up. In this webinar, international experts will present the main findings and recommendations from the IEA EBC Annex 75 project, showing the potential of district approaches for cost-effectively decarbonizing the building sector. The session today will be as follows. We will begin with a brief overview of the project from Manuela Almeida, Associate Professor at University of Minho in Portugal. Following Manuela, we will hear from Roman Bolliger, Project Manager at INDP in Switzerland, who will discuss optimization methodology and strategy development for building renovation at district level, combining energy efficiency and renewable energy systems. Eric Johansson, Associate Professor at Lund University in Sweden, will continue presentations and discuss barriers and drivers for energy efficient renovation at district level. Following Eric, we will have a short Q&A session and a poll with a few questions for you. For this, we encourage the audience to send us questions for the speakers. After the short Q&A, we will jump back into presentations with Erwin Lenicht, Assistant Professor at TU Delft, the Netherlands, who will present policy instruments for building renovation at district level, combining energy efficiency and renewable energy systems. Talea Constantinou, Associate Professor at TU Delft in the Netherlands and Build Up ambassadors, will continue by discussing business models for building renovation industry combining energy efficiency and renewable energy system. Finally, Manuel Almeida will round off the presentations by summarizing the Annex 75 main recommendations and top recommendations for policymakers and professional homeowners. We will then close the session with a second short Q&A session. We invite and encourage the audience to send us questions through the GoToWebinar platform that can be answered during both Q&A sessions. Please specify your question is for a specific speaker or if it's for all speakers to answer. You will be able to find the webinar recording on the Build Up portal and our YouTube channel in the coming days, together with the presentation slides. And now, without further hesitation, we will move directly to our first speaker of today, Manuela Almeida, Associate Professor at University of Minho in Portugal. Manuela, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, and thank you for coming and for your interest in this project promoted by IEA. And just to say that this project gathered the participation of 13 countries, the majority from Europe, so 12 countries are European countries, which means that our results and conclusions are showing an European vision of the questions related to district renovation. And we have been working together since 2018 until June this year. And at the beginning, a few years ago, we defined two major goals. I'm sorry, but this is not changing the slide. Okay, thank you. So the goals we've defined were to investigate cost-effective strategies for reducing carbon emissions and energy use in buildings at the district level, combining energy efficiency measures and measures that promote the use of renewable energy. And was also our goal to provide guidance to policymakers, companies working in the field of energy transition, as well as building owners to cost-effectively transform the existing building stock into low-emission and low-energy solutions. And our key question was to find the balance point between energy efficiency measures and measures that promote the use of renewable energy. And the scope of the project was mainly residential buildings, although we also dealt with some non-residential buildings, but without complex HVAC systems like schools or small office buildings. So next slide, please. So renovation at the district level can bring opportunities, but can also be very challenging when compared to building level. Finding this balance between renewable energy supplies and energy efficiency measures for the renovation of the existing stock is much more complex at district level than for individual buildings, but may also bring larger benefits. So in this context, we thought that it would be important to explore the potential of cost-effective renovations at district level to accelerate the transition towards low emissions and low energy districts. Next slide, please. With this in mind, we defined a few specific objectives that were to, at first, give an overview of existing and emerging technology options for cost-effective renovation strategies. Also, to define a methodology supported by one or more tools to identify these cost-effective strategies for the renovation of urban districts, combining energy efficiency measures and renewable energy measures. Also to identify and document good examples, as well as explore case studies, highlighting the strategies for an effective transformation of the existing districts into low energy, low emission districts. And finally, our major goal to provide guidelines for policymakers and also for building owners and investors. So next slide, please. So in the years we worked together, we produced several reports, 13 reports we produced, and we have also developed a supporting online tool and also an online interactive map where selected case studies were or are analyzed to understand the problems and opportunities faced in different district renovation processes. You can find all these reports and the tools in our website. So I invite you to visit this website and explore the different reports we have there. So after this very, very short overview of the project, the next presentations will focus on specific topics, the ones highlighted in green in this slide. And so we thought you can say more relevant topics. And the next speaker will be Romain Bolliger, who will talk about the methodology we developed in this project and its application to a case study. So Romain, please, you can proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Manuela, for the introduction, and Emily for having us here on the Build Up platform. Thank you a lot, everyone participating in here, also from my side for listening. I'm going to talk about methodology, and I will illustrate methodology based on a case study. One of the main points that we were looking at in Annex 75 has been this balance between energy efficiency measures and renewable energy measures. And in terms of research questions that are associated to that, it's specifically the third one in this list of selected research questions that we have been looking at. So the question basically is whether in district heating systems, the same level of efficiency measures make sense compared to individual heating systems, because one could assume, for example, that since district heating systems have a large amount of fixed costs, it wouldn't matter that much how much we do on the efficiency side. And so it could be assumed that in district heating projects, there is less potential for energy efficiency measures. So we want to take a look at that more closely. And associated to that is also the question whether at all it makes sense to carry out district heating projects or district projects compared to individual building renovation projects in terms of cost effectiveness, and also the larger questions, what are cost effective combinations between renewable energy measures and energy efficiency measures at district scale. So to investigate these questions, we were basically defining a set of measures, both on the renewable energy side and on the energy efficiency side. And one important point to note is that when we look at cost effectiveness, it's important to look at it always in comparison with the reference scenario. Because if we just compare before and after the renovation, we miss an important aspect, because even in case we don't do anything to improve the building energetically, we do also have costs in the so-called anyway case, just to restore the building's functionality. So when we talk about cost effectiveness, building renovation measures, it's important to note that not all of that is really, of those costs are really necessary to improve the energy performance, but some of those costs are already necessary just to restore the building's functionality. And we look at cost effectiveness always in comparison with what would have to be done anyway. When we look at then the question, what elements does a district heating system have in terms of how efficiency measures may influence the cost of the entire system, we distinguish four main elements. So the heat source intake of a district heating system, centralized heat generator, pipes, distribution system, and individual heating substation in principle. There were several case studies carried out in Annex 75. Also some success stories were documented, and I'm going to talk now about one to illustrate the methodology based in Lucerne, based on a group of around 18 buildings, residential buildings. And when we were carrying out this case study, we started by carrying out energy performance certificates for most of these buildings, just to get a better understanding of what their energy performance is as a basis for carrying out then further calculations. We were also obtaining cost data on energy projects, on heating projects. And we were then defining various sets of combinations of energy efficiency measures on the building envelopes, ranging from just a reference case with only restoring building's functionality to comprehensive renovation package, including windows, roof, cellar ceiling, or exterior wall insulation. And we applied then these energy efficiency measures to scenarios with various types of renewable energy systems, both centralized and decentralized. And here's now some of the results that we were generating. So here, based on an example of just individual air source heat pumps. So here's the reference case in terms of primary energy use and costs. And when we switch to air source heat pumps, just the heating system, we have more or less the same costs, yet if we combine with energy efficiency measures, we can reduce the overall costs up to a certain point before the costs rise again if we go further with energy efficiency measures. And what we're interested in is to compare such results with centralized, with district projects as well. So if you look, for example, in comparison with a lake water centralized heat pump, we see, first of all, that the cost just of a lake water centralized heat pump without carrying out energy efficiency measures would be higher, significantly higher than the reference case. However, if we apply the energy efficiency measures, we bring down the costs before they rise again. And the important thing now is that this cost optimal scenario of this set of renovation packages is the same. We found it to be the same for the air source heat pump or for lake water centralized heat pump. And this was something that we found quite consistently in various assessments, also for other heating systems. So here is now a graph showing various heating systems, the same steps in renovation measures as dots here in the curves. And we see that the most cost-effective scenario or the cost-effective renovation package on building envelope is basically usually the same for all types of heating systems. Can also be illustrated in this type of graph, where the renovation package V6 remains to be the most cost optimal for various heating systems. And we observed that in this case study that lake water district heating with centralized heat pump basically had the highest cost savings in terms of energy efficiency measures, higher than the reference case, but also higher than other renewable energy systems. Also can be seen in this graph when we have no efficiency measures of the building envelopes. The district heating system is quite more cost intensive than the other solutions. Yet if you apply efficiency measures, it's more leveled out. So from this case study, the conclusion has been that for all investigated renewable energy systems, first of all, the energy efficiency measures on building envelopes are at least as cost effective as with a fossil fuel-based heating system. And moreover, that for individual heating systems and for district heating systems, the same package of efficiency measures on the building envelopes is most cost-effective. The cost effectiveness of various investigated heating systems is relatively similar. We also saw that in the graphs, and that we even saw some trends in this case study that synergies between efficiency measures on building envelopes and the use of renewable energies are larger for district heating systems compared with decentralized energy efficiency systems. When we were looking at strategy development, we distinguished basically 4 questions that can be interesting to ask oneself when developing a plan how to renovate a district. And the first question would be to take a look at the starting condition, whether there is already an existing heating system, centralized or decentralized, what kind of production and distribution concept is then foreseen for the new solution in terms of energy provision, then to choose the technology of the related heating or cooling system, and then also to ask oneself how much to carry out energy efficiency measures in association with the related heating system. And some selected conclusions for strategy development are that, first of all, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, so each district has to be investigated individually. The best solutions depend on the starting situation of the district, such as insulation levels and associated energy needs, the available already existing heating systems, available energy sources. Yet in terms of the main question that I asked you or mentioned at the beginning, the balance point between energy efficiency and renewables, we gave this recommendation that energy efficiency measures make a lot of sense also with district heating systems. There are synergies available, so it's not the case, as I said before, that energy efficiency measures don't make sense at district heating level. So there are a lot of synergies, and one important factor there is that the temperature of the district heating system, it may be lowered if energy efficiency measures are carried out, which doesn't only reduce losses in the system, yet also that the centralized heat pumps, for example, they run much more efficiently if the temperature can be lowered a little bit. They already are not so efficient because the temperature is relatively high in a district heating system, as it has to accommodate all types of buildings. Yet by carrying out energy efficiency measures, it's possible to reduce that temperature level, and this can be quite an important factor. With regard to the other point I mentioned, whether it makes sense to carry out district heating projects at all, well, we saw that the difference between renewable energy systems at district level and at individual level are quite small. And we also have to take into account that there are a lot of risks involved in district heating projects because a lot of upfront investments have to be made, and it's not clear whether the project is going to be successful. So there is no clear economic case often for district heating projects. On the other hand, we identified a lot of other good reasons to carry out centralized projects, for example, to make use of large heat source or seasonal thermal storage, to have more flexibility, to reduce the burden on the electricity grid, or to provide heating solution also to buildings for which it is difficult to switch to renewable energies, for example, due to noise or space restrictions in cities. Yet these additional benefits, they're mostly like public interest benefits. So one main conclusion, therefore, has been that if policymakers want to make use of the related benefits that district projects bring, policy action is most likely to be needed to make such projects happen, because the market all by itself is unlikely to deliver district solutions to a large extent. This brings me to the end of my presentation, and I gladly hand over to Erik Johansen from Sweden.
Thank you, Roman. So I will continue and talk about the barriers and drivers for energy efficient renovation at district level. Yeah, sorry. Yes, in this part of the research, we looked at a few research questions related to energy efficient renovation at district level. What are the main barriers and drivers concerning this? What barriers must be overcome to achieve successful renovation? And what are the most important drivers enabling renovation? And we did an analysis of 15 success stories. Those were recent renovation projects at district level. And we also conducted 38 interviews with different stakeholders within the annex. And as Manuela mentioned in the beginning, several European countries were involved in this study, representing then Northern Europe, Central Europe, and also Southern Europe. So it's quite good spread over Europe. The type of stakeholders that were interviewed were policy actors, so authorities, public agencies, etc., renovation solution suppliers, energy solution suppliers, clients and beneficiaries, and in that category included investors, residents, as well as homeowner and housing associations. We had financing intermediaries like banks, real estate developers, and also what we call other intermediaries, including neighborhood associations, consultants, and lots of other stakeholders. And the barriers and drivers that were found could be divided into different categories. So we have the policy aspects, legal aspects, economic aspects, social aspects, communication, technical aspects, and finally knowledge and training. And so we'll go through the results here when it comes to barriers and drivers, and starting with the main barriers. And if we look at policy aspects, we could find that there was a lack of synchronization between authorities and local, regional, and national level. Local authorities often lack financial and human resources and technical expertise. This is especially true for small municipalities. It is often difficult for municipalities to influence private actors and homeowner associations. When it comes to legal aspects, a barrier was that there's often a too rigid legal framework. It can be concerning energy requirements or tenant laws or any other legal aspects. And also, it's common that there is a very complex ownership structure within the districts. When it comes to economic aspects, one barrier was the lack of financial incentives, especially then at district level. Also, another barrier, lack of financial support to low-income people, which is a vulnerable group and difficult in district renovation. And also that another barrier that private homeowners do not want to take loans. And for social aspects, one barrier was the risk that low-income people need to move from the district. So this vulnerable group are very sensible, for example, to increase in rent, which may be a consequence of the renovation. Another barrier is the lack of trust in authorities and other actors involved in energy renovation. When it comes to communication, a barrier there is the poor dialogue and coordination between stakeholders, and also lack of adequate advice and guidance. When it comes to technical aspects, barrier is the difficulty for residents to switch from individual to centralized installations, and also that there is a great variation in the technical condition of the buildings in the district. And finally, when it comes to knowledge and training, one main barrier was the insufficient knowledge and expertise among stakeholders, including then authorities, consultants, contractors, etc. Those were the main barriers that were found. And move over to the main drivers. And starting with the policy aspects, and here it was found that local authorities and municipalities can play a decisive role as drivers in the process. They can, for example, act as coordinating actors to reach many stakeholders. They can develop visions, energy strategies, and tools. They can organize consulting and awareness campaigns. They can improve the outdoor environment in the districts. They can facilitate necessary permissions, like building permits, for example, and provide funding framework for homeowners and housing associations. As for economic aspects, the use of bank guarantees and revolving funds could be an important driver, as well as economic incentives to encourage a shift to carbon-free energy. Another driver is the financial help, special financial help to low-income groups, and also the change from individual heating of each building to district heating, which is related to economy of scale. And as for social aspects, an identified driver was the citizen involvement and user participation to raise the acceptance, and also to facilitate for residents to stay in the district in order to maintain the social cohesion in the district. When it comes to communication, the main driver was found to be that advice and guidance is involved to involve actors during the whole renovation period. A good stakeholder dialogue throughout the project, for example, through thematic workshops, and a good dialogue between the local authorities and citizen groups in order to build trust. Of the technical aspects, important driver is the standardization and prefab solutions at district level. And this is especially important and the possibility when there are many buildings of the same type. And finally, when it comes to knowledge and training, a main driver was the training of key actors involved in different parts of the renovation. So to end here with some recommendations and conclusions that were found from this study about barriers and drivers. It's recommended to have a holistic approach to district renovation. So combining energy renovation with upgrading of the district, for example, improving outdoor environment and social infrastructure. And this will help to create trust in the renovation process of the district. It's also recommended that local authorities should have a leading role in coordinating district renovation. For example, communicating with different stakeholders, identifying appropriate solutions for a given district, support the creation of appropriate legal structures. Another recommendation is that public housing associations, in those cases that these housing associations exist in the country, they can play an important role in the energy renovation, especially if the municipality has ambitious goals when it comes to energy efficiency and the use of renewable energies. Another recommendation is that already implemented projects can help in identifying certain standardization and thereby more efficient construction in order to achieve synergy effects, prefabricated solutions, and also standardization of the processes. And finally, best practice examples constitute a good way to encourage the spread of renovation at district level. And this can be either by starting with a single building and upscale it to the whole district, or spreading good district examples to other districts. And one could also include maybe learning from one country to another country when it comes to best practices. That was my last slide here, and just if you're interested to read more about the findings regarding barriers and drivers, you can please turn to one of these reports. Two of them are within the Annex reports, and there is also one journal article. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you very much, Manuela and Roman, too. We're going to have a brief Q&A session before the second part, and a little poll with a few questions for our audience. First thing, they're very interested in having your documents. I can recall you that we will put it in the build-up portal in a few days, so you will have everything there. We have a question from the audience from Roman. It's very practical. One is that, is any database available concerning the Switzerland project that can be accessed and used by researchers?
We don't have it as such available. We would, yeah, maybe we can help you in some way if you send us a question.
Okay, so audience, you can contact the team to have this. We can continue with you, Roman. What is meant with the potential benefit of make use of a large heat source for a district solution?
Well, this can refer, for example, to making use of engine lakes or rivers for surface water heat pumps, or also to access groundwater. In some places, it's not allowed to use groundwater for individual buildings, but only for a group of buildings. So the district projects enable to access that type of heat source, and there are others like thermal storage or waste heat, for example.
Okay, perfect. Manuela, you talked about a calculation tool that was developed during the project. What are your experiences developing this tool at a district level?
If Manuela, we couldn't hear you, Manuela, so maybe I can step in and also answer.
Yes,
from my
I
side.
think Emanuela have lost the audio. Yes, you can step in for sure, please.
Yes, so basically we were looking at various tools that can be adapted, and project partners were working with several tools, and we think that the Annex 75 tool is a good model tool to understand the principle of methodology, and also to carry out further adaptations of that tool or other tools to apply the methodology.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Eric, you talk about policy and legal barriers as some of the barriers that you enumerate. Have you seen a difference in between countries, because you have been in 8 countries with 15 projects, if I'm not wrong? How different is legal and policy barriers by European country, and how are the drivers proposed to overcome it?
Yeah, there is of course quite a big difference between the different countries when it comes to many of these legal and policy aspects, and one thing can be, for example, that in some countries, the municipal housing associations play an important role, in other countries not. And yeah, obviously the legal system is very different from country to country. So I think what it was a good lesson from this annex was to see how it works in different countries and learn from the different countries, and maybe be inspired by how a solution in one country could be used in another country.
Okay, we have a questions for Roman. It's a little bit long one. Was the calculations regarding cost efficiency based on simulations, or was any sensitivity analysis done? For example, energy price envelope like U-value, weather data like EPCC scenarios.
Yeah, so there was a model made to model the district heating system and how it's influenced by energy efficiency measures in various parts. And yes, the sensitivity assessments were carried out in various to various degrees. And of course, it's right to point out that energy prices, of course, make a big impact, and also the initial energy performance of the buildings is important for the result on how cost-effective building renovation measures are.
Mm-hmm. And same person is questioning. It's from Mr. Country, and he asked what to do if housing associations are not given and the ownership is too fragmented, as is the case of Eastern Europe.
I think that
will be for Eric or for Roman also, for both of you.
Yeah, I will pass up to either Eric or also speakers who come afterwards.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, they said what to do if housing associations are not given and the ownership is too fragmented, as it is the case of the Eastern Europe.
Yeah, it's obviously a big problem. It makes it's more complicated. So it's yeah, requires more coordination and in the renovation process, and to deal with the different owners, etc. So yeah, it's I think that's the only answer that it will be more complicated, but needs even more efforts to for the dialogue between the different actors in the process.
Okay, Tali is jumping, saying that these questions we can go further in them in the second Q&A sessions. So perfect. Thank you very much to both of you, to the three of you, and let's go for a little poll where our audience could participate. Let's go to Slido. Okay. So you can all put your cameras with the Slido and see the polls there, and the questions will jump. Okay, so in what role are you engaged in energy efficiency or renewable energy? And this big one, at least. You can be an international or European policy actor, academia or research, we have a lot, national, regional, or local policy actors, renovation or energy solution supplier, financing institution will be nice, or beneficiary, client or building owner, or others. You can be several for sure. Okay, so academia is a clear winner. Nice to see that we have also clients and buildings owners. That's awesome that they are interested in hearing us. Okay. So more than 75% we are from academia and research. Can go to the second one. Okay, tick the boxes for which topics you already develop in practical experience. Enforcement of energy standards or solutions in district, inspections and energy audits, creating financial incentives for district, creating financial incentives for groups of homeowners, creating renovation services in districts, developing local energy consultancy desk, hosting a local website or district development, or organizing network meetings in districts. Okay. Interesting. So mainly creating renovation service in districts. Although we are in academia, we must be sharing helmets. Mm-hmm. Okay, few more seconds. Mm-hmm. So finally, enforcement of energy standards or solution in districts is a little bit, is just the 50% more or less. Okay. Okay, super. I see financial incentives also. So after this little poll, thank you very much for participating. I give the floor to Erwin Schlenik, assistant professor at TU Delft, the Netherlands. Erwin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. My talk will be about policy instruments in the framework of the Annex 75 project. So basically what we can see happening in Europe is that there are lots of policies and directives being developed that point towards district action, like the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive points out the need to increase renovation rates, minimum building energy performance standards, and long-term renovation strategies. The renovation wave explicitly mentions the need for integrated, participatory, and neighborhood-based approach at the heart of the renovation. And there's now also the new Leipzig Charter, which identifies the district as an important level for integrated urban transformation. So what we can see in practice is that, well, there's a lot happening regarding heat grid development, for example, at district scale. But renovations at district scale are still rather scarce. And we, even in the annex, we only found a few examples. So there is a need for policy instruments to really achieve breakthroughs regarding building renovation at district scale. And as Eric also mentioned, the local authorities are becoming a very important actor in steering and shaping this upscaling of the number of renovations that include both energy efficiency measures as well as renewable energy systems. So in this work, we have been focusing on the policy instruments. So the question was, how can policies, especially those deployed at local level, increase residential building renovation and renewable energy systems at district levels. And this report actually is structured in various parts. First of all, there is a catalog of possible and available policy instruments. There are results mentioned from interrogations during workshops and during in-depth interviews in eight countries. There's a part that deals with a quantitative assessment on the degree stakeholders think that proposed policy instruments can be useful, important, and easy to implement. And there's a qualitative assessment, especially also looking at country differences and lessons from other countries. So coming to the catalog of policy instruments, usually we think about sticks and carrots, regulations and incentives. So these were also detected, but besides that, there are other categories of policy instruments that become very important, such as the planning and the tendering for districts, the organizational instruments, communication instruments, and other emerging initiatives that might help the district development. So regarding regulations, it would be possible to enforce minimum energy standards in districts. However, this can be very complicated and it's not a very popular measures for politicians to do. There can be done inspections and audits in districts, especially when there's a concern about livability in a district and the quality of social housing. There might be incentives, financial incentives created by the local authorities for districts as a supplement to existing national incentives. But let's maybe focus more on the other instruments that are interesting. So I will give one example of a bottom-up approach and one of a top-down approach. Looking at how we deal with this in the report, so systematically describing barriers and opportunities related to each policy instrument. For example, a top-down approach, local authority planning, is actually has a great opportunity to combine the energy efficiency issue with the development of energy grids at the same time. However, most of the heat plans that are being developed now do not take into account energy efficiency of the buildings. Neither do they have obligations to go to low temperature heat grids, for example. Big advantage could be that there's a professional top-down planning with experts. On the other hand, the participation processes are still needed in order to gain acceptance within the neighborhood. There's an opportunity for performance-based tendering to really specify energy performance of a district. There might be, with such planning, so a good legal basis to start actions. So on the other hand, there are still barriers, as also Eric mentioned. There's also gentrification risk. Once we start renovating a district, then people might move to other districts and we can lose the social cohesion. To give an example of a bottom-up approach, a bottom-up policy instrument, like, for example, developing a consultancy desk in a district to give energy consultancy or sustainability consultancy. Big opportunity there is that you really can focus on engaging the citizens and on burdening the homeowners. You can target multiple owners at the same time, and while at the same time gaining the trust of these owners with independent advisors or people from the neighborhood themselves to give the advice. There's an opportunity to raise individual awareness and to provide really easy access to solutions for individual homeowners. And there's an opportunity to create alliances on the local level, also for supplying the renovation and energy solutions. On the other hand, it can be very tricky for a local authority to procure such a service, such as an advice desk. Tendering processes are quite experimental, and the activity itself can be very labor intensive. The other barriers that the service does not necessarily target a specific district or customer segment. So for example, there might be a general consultant who is not specialized in legal issues of condominium associations, for example. There may be a possible lack of client follow-up. That's actually one of the barriers that's very important. Most of the local authorities don't even have a CRM system to follow up the activities that take place during the advice and after the advice. And there might also be a lack of long-term engagement, especially if we talk about temporary consultancy services. So this is how we deal with these issues in the report from the catalog part. If we look at the quantitative analysis in the report, we have been asking about policy instruments, similar policy instruments as you just mentioned in the poll. So we were asking if the interviewees were using these instruments, interested in them, if they thought they were important, if they thought they were easy to develop or implement. So the interviewees here were all like experts in their field and experienced with some aspect of the district renovation. So 62% had direct experience. 72% valued the policy instruments as important or very important, and about 25% considered them easy or somewhat easy to implement. So that's the problem here at hand, is that well, most of these instruments are very relevant to target district action. However, they might be difficult to implement. Now, we also found that there's a difference in opinion between policy actors and non-policy actors. Here you can see on the x-axis these 8 policy instruments that we focused on, and the importance rating. The orange line is the importance rating by the policy actors, and the blue line by the non-policy actors, by mainly market actors. And you can see, for example, that policy actors are more inclined towards finding the easy measures, such as developing websites or communications. They find these more important, while the market actors really emphasize that also obligations are needed. So inspections and energy audits are found more important by non-policy actors than by policy actors. Last part of this report is about a country discussion, and there clearly we can see that countries can learn from each other's successes and failures. We have good examples and also less successful examples where we can learn from. For example, in Austria, there are district management offices that can take care of energy-related renovations. Nice example in Vienna. In Belgium, they had some experience with introducing a financial incentive for neighbors to do a renovation together. However, this did not lead to the expected outcome that also people in the same street or in the same district would apply for such a grant. In Switzerland, there are interesting examples of cantonal subsidies and as well as obligations for switching to renewable energy-based heating systems, and also voluntary energy performance labels such as the Minergie and the 2000 watt areas that can inspire further policy development. In Germany, we found very interesting the KfW, Kredit for the Wirtschaft grant, which specifically focuses on urban development of districts, and that we found that many local authorities also use this grant to couple that with regional and local add-ons and incentives. In the Netherlands, there's a strong emphasis on the role of local authorities to develop the district heat plans, which is also quite unique. And in Spain, we found interesting policy for the rehabilitation of rural areas. So overall, the main message is that local authorities can be drivers of district projects, but they largely depend on available and sometimes inconsistent national and regional structures initiatives, support and resources. That brings me to my conclusion. We found that in the policy studies that the district scale approach can lead to upscaling of energy renovations, but it comes with important local and social challenges that can be addressed with various types of policy instruments. So this report gives a nice overview of possible policy instruments that are generally considered useful and important for accelerating building renovations at district scale, especially when looking at the combination of energy efficiency and renewable energy systems. So we would like to suggest to put emphasis on making this local implementation of these instruments easier, to make sure that national policy alleviates possible barriers, especially for local authorities, and that local authorities can be empowered or unburdened somehow. Especially the smaller local authorities, they don't have the necessary resources and people to cover district renovation. So then there's a need to provide unburdening. So thank you. This work was supported by many people, and thank you to all the Annex members who participated with the interviews, and all the workshop participants who already provided interesting information. And the related paper of this work also got an outstanding paper award, so you can also look into the paper for more information. Thank you very much. Now pass the floor to my colleague Taleo Constantino from Technical University of Delft.
Yes, thank you, Erwin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to talk about the work we have done within the framework of this annex, focusing on the business model for cost-effective building renovation at district scale. To understand first why business models are relevant for this discussion, we have to look at the barriers that have been identified for renovation, particularly energy renovation, and we can see a lot of those barriers relate to financing and stakeholders. So if we see the business model as the rationale how a company and its partners can create value for its clients and also revenue and cost structure, then we can see why business models are relevant for this discussion. So with that in mind, the goal of this part of the Annex was to find the key characteristics of business model that are important in order to upscale from building to district renovation, and also incorporating renewable energy sources. Also, gain insights about the opportunity that the different stakeholders have within those business models in order to support the implementation, but also the stakeholder dialogue, how all the people involved can communicate to overcome barriers such as fragmented and complex stakeholder structure. And then also see how, and in the end, to that respect, give recommendations to stakeholders, which we can also see as policy actors and non-policy actors, regarding the uptake of cost-effective combination that go to district scale. So the research was centered around those research questions, and which are the current practices for business model, for both for renovation and energy supply that are applicable to district renovation, which are the main stakeholder and what is their role in order, and how can we get to combine energy efficiency and renewable energy sources, and then which are the business model characteristics in order to upscale, and those characteristics relate to the value they offer, which are the beneficiaries, the client that use this value, how can we, which partnership are necessary in order to deliver that, and so on. So the first step was to make an overview of the state of the art, and this is, we call it a catalog of business model. I'm not going to go into detail now, but what is important to keep in mind is that we have, we look different as energy efficient renovation and energy supply business model because they differ considerably. They are characterized by how the process is managed, what is the role of the beneficiary, if there are other intermediate actors involved, which is the service and the value that is provided, and how is this distributed also in terms of cost and revenue. And then once we had this overview, we tried to see which are the key considerations in order to be able to combine renovation and energy supply. And the first thing is to understand the stakeholders who are there. So we had the stakeholder mapping and looking how can we combine those stakeholders in also innovation clusters, particularly the ones that are providing this service, and how can these clusters and these partnerships create value to whom, so who is the customer segment for that, and what is also the main driver. And then next to that, once we had this overview, we also asked the stakeholders about their opinion about it, about how can we, which of the current practices are good, how can we then go further with regards to the business model, which are the characteristics and which are the opportunities for upscaling. So this the last part was with the based on the interviews that both Eric and Erwin mentioned, which included questions particularly with regards to the business model and the business model characteristics. So some conclusions I would like to share today is that looking at the current practices, one thing that we can see is the fragmentation between energy supply and renovation solution suppliers. So those normally are approaching the business in separate ways, and they don't necessarily interact, or at least not to a large scale, which is a challenge, but it's also a possibility to make new kind of companies that can offer that. What is also important looking at the current business models, if we want to upscale, is that we have a single point of contact for all project needs, and that includes the technical solution, but also the financing solution, the communication, and so on. Renovation projects currently do apply renewable energy sources like PV, but it's generally in small scale, and it's not always part of the business model. So it's a solution that is provided, but it's not like it constitute a part of the whole value and the revenue that this activity offers. Energy service company that use energy performance contract as a financing mechanism has an advantage if we look at offering such integral solution and also are burden the beneficiary from initial investment. So that's something we need to keep in mind and going forward. Out of the stakeholder views, and we were looking to understand their role, but also their perceived role, because that's also important for the stakeholder dialogue. So the first graph shows the role of the different stakeholders, and the second graph shows their influence and actually their perceived influence. So what we can see is policy actors, but also beneficiaries is seen as the main decision makers, and also their influence is quite high. That's why we see a lot of orange in those graphs for those stakeholders. Energy suppliers are also a decision maker, not always. We saw that this depends a lot on the context and the specifics of the project, but they do have some influence. And intermediaries are normally processing are present in the process, but their influence is not very high in the sense they cannot really take the decision. And by other intermediaries are different consultants or other intermediaries that organize the process. And of course, the influence of financial intermediaries is quite high. In terms of characteristics of that a business model should have going towards district scale, it's very important that we look beyond energy efficiency, and we also should see the additional values also in terms of district and district quality. That's also something that Eric mentioned as part of the main drivers, but that's also something then we can take into the business model and the value that we are offering. Having one point of reference is important to help all the residents, and that also answers a little bit to the question we had before about how to deal with the fragmented ownership. So this is something that it could help. And including services like communication and financing next to the technical solution is important. We should, looking especially at the energy supply, we should also see the role of prosumer as a beneficiary, not only that somebody that sells energy to the grid. So combine this role. With regards to partnership, both renovation and energy actors are important. That's something that is not happening as much yet, but that's a direction we need to go if we are to offer integrated solution. Policy partners are very important and they should be involved. That's something that we saw in the previous presentation, because they also help communication, but also in building trust. We do need innovation in the business model, in the partnership, if we, as a way how to manage the whole part, not only providing the energy or provide the technical solution once. And with regards to financing, policy actors can support with subsidies and financing, which helps alleviate the cost. That's something that we have seen happening a lot in the district renovation that have happened so far. An energy performance contract for combined solutions have a lot of potential because they also are burden the initial investment. Going to recommendation, particularly with regards to policy actors, it echoes a bit what was discussed by Eric as well. We need to find possibilities to combine renovation with other qualities and public interest in the municipality. And that's why it's important that we have those actors in the process. And they also support with subsidies, which is important, while offering guarantees and increased trust. So they do have a role there. Nevertheless, the people that would actually realize these solutions and realize this business model and will own this business model are the non-policy actors, particularly the market. And they have the chance to do innovation and sector coupling, particularly with regards to energy renovation and energy. And the value that they need to offer is not only the technical solution, but also support during the process. It's important to have a long-term relation with the beneficiaries, especially when we think of energy performance contract, because we need longer periods in order to have an effective cost and revenue structure. And they also have the chance to realize other measures beyond energy efficiency, which means that they need partners in their partnership that are able to deliver more value. And especially when energy companies need to be a big part of this dialogue and those partnerships. And then particularly when we look at the community and the demand actors, the homeowners and so on, they can contribute with long-term planning, but also active participation. So these are all some key findings from me and recommendations. If you want to know more, you can access the report online, also through this QR code. Thank you.
So after this overview of some specific topics dealt with in this project, I now will show you the main findings, conclusions, and recommendations that emerged from this project. So Annex 75 is framed by current global concerns related to the decarbonization of the economy, meeting climate goals, and promoting the energy transition. And in this context, and in the building sector, there is an urgency to accelerate building renovation rates towards decarbonization. And renovation at the district or neighborhood level is a promising approach. And Annex 75 focused on investigating cost-effective strategies for reducing carbon emissions and energy use in urban districts, with an emphasis on combining energy efficiency and renewable energy measures. And Annex 75 proved that district-level building renovation is a viable option, as well as combining energy efficiency measures and renewables at the district level. But success depends on a holistic approach that encompasses cost effectiveness and co-benefits, serving the public interests and improving residents' quality of life. Annex 75 also proved that a framework is urgently needed that includes cooperation, information, capacity building, incentives, and adapted regulations. Can you please move to the next slide? Thank you. So as main findings, we can say that renovation at district level may bring larger benefits than at the individual level, as it has the potential to accelerate building renovation. It also may allow economies of scale for energy efficiency measures due to aggregated demands and synergies in construction procurement, process and planning. It also allows benefiting from centralized renewable energy approaches, enabling to explore additional heat sources and overcome space or noise restrictions associated to decentralized systems. It also offers an opportunity to address transversal issues like urban planning, housing affordability, energy grid integration related to mobility, accessibility, green and blue spaces, cultural leisure, and things like this. So district renovation has the potential to improve the overall quality of life of the residents, which also contributes to their acceptance of the renovation process. Please, next slide. Renovation at district level is also challenging, as the synergies between energy efficiency measures and the installation of renewable energy systems at district level, they may be significant, but they are difficult to achieve, as they entail an additional level of complexity and depend on the synchronization of the building renovation. Sorry, it disappears from my screen. Okay. Districts are also complex structures with several actors involved, and sometimes these actors have conflicting goals. And at district level, coordination and communication are crucial, as already my colleagues said before. And building renovation at district level is associated with high upfront costs and long payback time, and also high risks of not being implemented due to a potential withdrawal of some building owners that are at different stages. So please move to the next slide. So as main conclusions, we may say that there are no ready-made or one-fits-all solutions. Each district has to be analyzed individually, taking into account its specificities. The best solutions depend on the starting situation of the district, like the insulation level, installed heating and cooling systems, available energy sources, and the possibilities for integrating renewable energy. Also, the co-benefits or the additional benefits in the renovation process should be considered when deciding on the best solution. Another important conclusion was that not just the technical and economic aspects matter in a district energy renovation. Also, social, legal, and planning issues are equally important, and communication with different stakeholders is crucial. And another conclusion is policy measures are necessary to make use of opportunities offered by district projects, as very often they are not more cost effective than single building projects. So, based on the main findings and conclusions, we have prepared a long list of recommendations that my colleagues have already shown some. So we developed a list of recommendations targeted to different stakeholders and in different levels of action that you can find in the guidebooks that we published and that you can find in our website. So can you please move to the next slide? So these I put here are just a few recommendations that were extracted from the guidebook for policymakers. But there are other recommendations, other kind of recommendations target to different stakeholders as building owners or investors, for example, that, as I said, you can also find in our guidebooks. So just to mention a few of the recommendations, in this case related to policymakers, so they should develop at first a long-term vision and a strategic plan for district renovations aligned with energy and climate goals and policies. So also, they should also adapt laws and regulations to stimulate building energy renovation at district level and not only at building level. It would be also important to create a certification scheme also at neighborhood or at district level, besides the certification scheme at the building level. They should promote the use of renewable energy sources, including financial incentives, and unburden local collectives to make renewable energy sources and energy storage systems more accessible. They should also promote a holistic approach, linking building renovation also to urban planning. And it is crucial to provide financial support to increase the cost effectiveness of district renovation projects, as well as they should deploy financial measures, and business models to promote these zero carbon renovations. Also very important is to provide information and guidance for the different stakeholders involved in this process, in this renovation process, by creating awareness campaigns, education and training programs, energy advice centers, labeling schemes, best practice guides, supporting and easy to use tools. All these are essential in this district renovation process. The policymakers should also promote stakeholder engagement and collaboration in these district level renovation projects by creating platforms for dialogue, consultation and participation, fostering trust and transparency among the parties, important, and addressing also social and cultural aspects of the projects, not only the technical and economical issues. And policymakers should also support innovation and research on district level renovation by funding pilot projects, demonstration cases, technology development and testing, data collection, so on, that can show the benefits and potential of district level renovations. So please, next slide. So in summary, we can say that district approaches have a significant potential for cost-effectively decarbonizing the building sector, as they can offer synergies and solutions that are not possible at individual building level. However, district projects are much more complex and require tailored strategies, technology combinations, and policy frameworks, integrated thinking, and cooperation between different stakeholders. And international, national, and local policymakers have to provide clear and appropriate framework conditions to make use of related opportunities and to achieve the energy transition in the building sector at a pace compatible with the decarbonization goals. Next slide, please. So, as I said before, just to finish, you can find these and other recommendations in our guidebooks. We have published three guidebooks. One, we call it a handbook, a guide for policymakers and decision makers, with these conclusions and recommendations, and supported by some of with the studies we have been doing during these 5 years, 6 years of the project. And then we have published 2 short versions, only with the main recommendations, one short guide for policymakers and another short guide for investors and decision makers. Next slide, please. And just before finishing, just to remind you what I said before, if you are interested in the results and conclusions, I invite you to visit our website, where you can find the 13 reports I mentioned before, and also the online interactive map with the success stories, as we call them, and also the online calculation tool. And that's all. Thank you for staying.
Thank you very much, Manuela. Thank you to the audience for staying a little bit more, but we believe that renovation is in our agenda for all of us, so it's not bad to stay a little bit more to talk about renovation. So thank you to the three of you. Now to Erwin, Taleya, and Manuela. Some questions have come while you were presenting, and well, we have the one of the housing associations that will be for Erwin. Let's go first for one for Taleya. It says, how important is it to consider the business model of the key partners, so stakeholders, in the business model of the one service provider, is to say the one main point of reference?
Yes, I'm not sure I understand the question, but overall I think it's crucial. That's something that came up multiple times in different contexts. That is important for the whoever is the client. That could be individual owners, it could be housing association, or even neighborhood actors that want to be informed about it. It's important to make it easy for them, as long as affordable. And one way to do that is like that all the actions are centralized by one person, and this includes the technical solution, advice, comparison of technical solution, clear idea about the performance, but also like take care of the communication, and that's particularly important for housing associations or homeowners association that many parties have to agree, as well as financial support and maybe organize the application to subsidies and so on. So it's I think it's something going forward, especially when we want to upscale and we want to take into account more people, more that everybody has an individual situation, to make it as easy as possible for them. I hope this answered the question.
I think so. There is also a question for you that is more kind of a validation from your side plus a question. It says, business model track the progress in energy efficiency improvements of buildings at the district level over short-term or mid-term, right? Why long-term?
I wouldn't say it's short-term or mid-term though, because I mean, for example, if we look at this what we call the ESCO model, we look at another party, a company or a special purpose vehicle making the investment for the renovation, and then the people that are benefiting for the energy savings pay back this amount to in a way pay back the original investment. And this requires several years of commitment. So in this kind of structures, we are looking at the long-term commitment in order to make it viable business case for the party that organized that. Also, maybe the question refers to what I mentioned about long-term planning, and this refers to, for example, like me as a homeowner, I want to decide to renovate my house and I wanted to bring it to a certain level, but then I need to know the long-term planning of the energy system. For example, is district heating coming to my neighborhood in a few years? Or maybe when I know that district heating is coming, then I need to know, or maybe there is potential to integrate other renewable sources. I need to have my long-term planning as a homeowner or as a housing association when I expect renovations to happen, because maybe at that specific moment I think the house does not need renovation, but maybe in 5 years or in 10 years something needs to happen. So this is what I meant by long-term planning. So I think either cases, and this is in my view, a little bit of a barrier to upscale. We need this long-term planning, and we need to have the right people in place. And I think it's difficult to rely on individual homeowners for that they don't always have all the information. And that's why having more integrated partnerships and having the municipality have a clear energy planning and renovation planning is important.
Awesome. And that gives me the pass to ask to Erwin again the question that came in the first part, that is what to do if housing associations are not given and the ownership is too fragmented. That is in the case of Eastern Europe, but also in Southern Europe, for example.
Yes, that's an interesting question indeed. So what we have found in the districts is that there are often both actors are present, both private homeowners as well as housing associations. And even all private actors live together in condominiums, and they have to decide for their condominium together. So one of the conclusions of the study was indeed that maybe we are trying to go from buildings to districts, but there might also be like an intermediate level that we need to deal with, which is the buildings with the multiple owners. And because they have a very complex decision-making structure, for example, condominium association only gathers like once a year to discuss maintenance, let alone renovation, let alone energy renovation. So these processes often take 5 to 6 years before a renovation takes place. So we see a great potential also to develop business models for integrated home renovation services, particularly for these target groups of condominium associations and housing associations.
So I'm so sorry, I'm so sad to stop here. Manuela, Roman, Eric, Erwin, Taleya, thank you so much for pushing further renovation with the Annex 75. It will be a pleasure to have you again in any moment. A big thank you to all the audience for attending to the webinar and your patience for staying a little bit more. A reminder that you will be able to find the recording of today's session on the Build Up portal and our YouTube channel in the coming days, together with the presentation slides. We have many webinars planned for the second half of 2023, including some very interesting interactive sessions as part of the series with the Bus Go Circular project, which starts on Tuesday next week. So keep an eye on the Build Up calendar and our social media for updates on this. We wish you all a very pleasant week. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.